Good afternoon, Nkositalkshows family. It's Nomsa here at Nkositalkshows. Find your own voice, lead from within. With me today, I have Rachel G and Shireen Groove and Carol Ann Cooper. And our topic today is overcoming common barriers to self-forgiveness, tips to strategies. Carol Ann, you've chose this topic, and could you please explain the topic to our audience and what motivated you to choose this topic?
Thank you, Nomsa. And yeah, overcoming common barriers to self-forgiveness, tips and strategies. What are some common obstacles to self-forgiveness? And how can we actually overcome them was what was around, because we're talking about self-forgiveness. We've done quite a bit of talking about what self-forgiveness is and how can you do it. And I realized actually that there's obstacles. People will put in the way to stop themselves from forgiving themselves. So I thought, let's have an explore what might they be? Because sometimes people aren't aware that they're putting those obstacles there. And it's part of how we're sort of that 4 ways of learning and four levels of competency, isn't it? You just got no awareness to start with that anything's wrong. And so you just keep moving forward. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, actually, there is something wrong here. I'm not performing in the way I could. And I'm not forgiving myself. Perhaps weren't even aware in the beginning that was such a thing. Yes. So, from going from an unconscious incompetence to now going to a conscious incompetence, you're aware that it's something that you perhaps could do, but you're not doing. So why not? What are the barriers? Because then you start becoming aware of barriers in the way. So that's really what I sort of thought. Let's have an explore. What are these barriers? Can we do anything about them? Why are they there? So, Shireen, what were your thoughts when you saw the topic?
Yes. It's such an interesting topic. And I suppose what really clicked for me is a little bit like what you say. How hard is it to forgive ourselves, right? I certainly think we have learned how to forgive others, not necessarily always. There's some criteria that's needed and required for forgiveness. But I think what's really important is really, why don't we forgive ourselves? And part of me was really looking and wondering, what is it about, what does forgiveness do for us as such, and then what is it that makes us not go that route to give ourselves self-forgiveness? And why do we keep the blame or the shame or those kinds of feelings that keep running the pattern? And as you said something, Carol Ann, which is, we don't even know, we haven't done that. We haven't forgiven ourselves. We may have solved these problems, but then you kind of realize, actually, they're not solved because they keep coming back and back and back. And one of the key reasons is because we haven't deliberately forgiven ourselves. We're still holding on to the anger at ourselves or those feelings that we really can't let them go. And I think it's really just to understand what forgiveness is. Because if we don't realize that forgiveness is about the absolute release of stuff, it's unlikely that we're going to, it's unlikely that we're actually going to do it. Because it is a deliberate and conscious act, isn't it, to forgive?
Yeah.
And so that was really what was running in my mind, particularly what happens when we don't forgive ourselves. And I mean, I know I have so many clients that come and eventually I say, well, actually what we need to do is a forgiveness pattern, or we need to do some form of letting go in a sense of a forgiving. And they just look at me really blankly, how do we forgive? And what I kind of started to look into was the idea that if we don't give ourselves a sincere apology, then it's very unlikely that we're going to forgive. So if we can't even apologize to ourselves, if we can't even spend time with ourselves in that way and say, look, I'm really sorry that you've done this to yourself, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to change it. It's just that if we can't even apologize to ourselves, our brain will not allow, it activates different areas in our brain, and we're then not able to take care of ourselves in a different way. So that was what really came up for me when the topic arose. So yeah, Rachel, so nice to see you again. So what kind of got you into it, that you thought, I must be here today?
Well, being that this I've been off for quite a while, and this is the first time I've come back, and I saw this as the subject, and something said, okay, you've just been doing a lot of this, so you can jump in and what has to be said. And I think you're totally right. So first of all, there needs to be an understanding of what self-forgiveness is, and that, I think, is a lot connected to just the word forgiveness that then people will get themselves stuck on. And as you said, Carol Ann, that you've already discussed that in another topic, in another session. But for me, what came up is the fact that when you mentioned, Shireen, then about release, that is an important factor. But to get to that point where you're able to release starts a long way back.
Exactly.
The first thing for me was there was no way that I would ever be able to forgive myself whilst I was feeling or had low self-esteem. So the first thing to work on was my self-esteem, and through working on my self-esteem, you then I was looking at like the fears that I had if I was to forgive myself. There was, strangely enough, fears that come up like, well, if I forgive myself, it means I might be somebody different then. What does that entail? And then all three elements, the last one being, it has to be the right time. You have to be ready to be able to forgive yourself. There's no point trying to forgive yourself when you're not ready, when you haven't done a certain amount of inner work to be able to get you to the place where you're able to see and feel, oh, I actually am needing to forgive myself now. And so for me, those are actually the barriers that were for myself, was low self-esteem, not being able to face myself. I didn't want to face myself. Why? Because I feared certain things. And why did I fear certain things? Because the timing wasn't right. I hadn't done enough work to deal with other things that were going on within myself, to be able to get myself to that place of forgiveness, so that I could say, I accept the reality of what has happened, and I want to find resolution because I deserve it. And that is a key thing. If you don't feel you deserve it, you're never going to forgive yourself.
Absolutely. And that's lovely. And I love what you're saying about fears coming up, because you might you might become someone else or someone different. It's something,
yes, I wanted
it's
to protect myself.
It's your identity, who you know yourself to be. All of a sudden you won't be if you start forgiving yourself, and it's like, oh, different persona could emerge. Who's that going to be? What's she going to be like? And wow, don't want to go there. So yeah, huge obstacle and fear. So certainly that is something to work with and look at. And I certainly get that. And that low self-esteem, it is that, am I worth? It's that self-worth, that self-esteem, isn't it? They're sort of quite interlinked. There's different levels of that. But am I worthy of forgiveness? Being forgiven? And so certainly the inner work, and I think this is where this topic discussion today goes, because those obstacles are coming up from within, and it is about doing that inner work so that we can get to that place of then doing the forgiveness. So I think we've sort of done things a little bit, asked about face in a way. We talked about forgiveness in previous topics, but no, I believe timing is perfect. And, it's great that you can be with us now, Rachel, to give your part in this. And I must admit, actually, when I was thinking and sending it to Noms, I remember thinking, oh, Rachel, I'd love to have you here tomorrow. It just went through my head. I know, fleeting, So it's perfect, and it's beautiful to have your thoughts, having just recently gone through this.
Mhm.
you know, and probably still going through it. I'd
Yeah,
imagine.
never ending. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No. Nomsa, you're
Overcoming common barriers to self-forgiveness is a very deep, it's very, very deep topic. And thank you, Carol Ann, for actually choosing the topic. And thank you, Rachel, for being here today. We missed you so much. And I just saw your smile this morning. You brought a smile to my face this morning. When I saw the picture, you were so lively. And I was like, oh, she's back. I just smiled and I was like, she's back. So, and I knew you were going to pull through anyway. So, and thank you, Sharina, for being here and dealing with the barriers, overcoming the barriers. It's a very, very deep topic. The reason why I'm saying it's a very, very deep topic, self-forgiveness is all starts with you and the releasing, because sometimes we may, when we go through some stuff, we may feel like we have betrayed ourselves. But we have to understand that life is life. Life is going to throw us with things that we didn't expect. And we just have, is up to you, basically a choice to actually forgive yourself. And for me, it was the other way around when I released self-forgiveness. I went to 4 psychologists, and these people were talking like Carol Ann and Rachel and Sharina, you're saying it's a choice. So me, I just went and the people were talking and talking. These psychologists kept talking. I couldn't get a word what they were saying. I tried their exercises. I've tried everything. It didn't work. But when I left the woman, the 4th one, when I left her, and I started praying now. And I was like, I need to start praying. Then I went back to Paul McKenna's. Paul McKenna was explaining the power of forgiveness step by step. So now I'm praying. I'm actually, instead of me forgiving myself, I was like, God, I have no clue what is going on right now. I've never felt so low in my life. I need deliverance. I need help. And I can feel that there was like a dark cloud, you know, like when you see the dark, you're in the dark, the cloud coming out, and I couldn't understand. My body felt different. It felt like somebody was pulling something out of my chest. And then I felt so clear. I was like, what have I been doing? I've been holding, that's unforgiveness. Somebody upsets you, I'm going to hold it. I get angry. And I didn't know that when I get angry, I'm shutting the door. It's a chain that I'm chaining to myself. And when I get upset or somebody upset me, I hold it inside of me. They should know better. They shouldn't do this. They shouldn't do this. That feeling sorry, you guys know the feeling sorry club. Or a man with a relationship, you know, the all that journey. But I didn't know that actually I needed to actually forgive myself and release everything. But since then, I do not hold nobody's, I don't hold no anger. It's either I say out loud and I release it. And when I release it, I will try my best to actually to get deliverance, to deliver myself, because it is self unforgiveness. It can cause pain, it can cause sickness. So you have to let it go. Some people say, why do I have to be the one that forgives? I'm like, forgiveness, you don't forgive for somebody else, it's self. You're forgiving everything. The battle that we fight is with us. It's easy, somebody can come and hurt you, they move on, and they're going to hit somebody else. So it's very, very important to actually have a strategy as a human being. Like Rachel, you were going through divorce and never ask for divorce. It's a relationship that at the beginning was so beautiful, and then things didn't work out, and we all have gone through that. But the good thing is, you actually motivated me, because I watch you going through not pain. I watch you going through being okay. I'm okay with this. and I'm dealing with it. You were like, I'm okay. Whatever is going on, you were coming to the talk show and you were like, I'm okay. Whatever is you bring into my life, the pain, I'm okay with it. But then there were times where you were like, I need to work on my healing now properly, and I need to be out of the show. So I think that is courage. It is really, really courage to be able to have that courage to do that. And I don't think some people they can do it. So any secret? Anyone wants to give a secret? How do you guys be able to be okay of being hurt and go through the healing and allow the feelings and the process to actually take you and come on the other side? Anyone just want to take over?
I don't know. Do we ever decide that we're going to take the pain, and is it a decision, or is it just something that sometimes happens to us? Because even though I knew my relationship with my husband wasn't working for years, you know, we just sort of kept putting it off. And when it did actually happen, it was almost like it was thrust upon me. Something else made that decision. And although it worked out well the way it happened, it's still a, oh, what happened here? Is this really what I want? But yes, it was. And over time, I started to realize in actually doing, you know, training in all these other fields that I've now trained in, I started looking back and was able to see my part in it. So I think it's actually, once you get some distance from it, me, was then being able to look back and see my part in it. It wasn't all down to him. It wasn't all down to his past and his upbringing and, you know, the way he always showed up. And I would always seem to be pussyfooting around that and making excuses for it, because it was like, it was his background and that's why he was how he was. That's how we were, you know, being as we were. But once I got that distance and obviously and doing that inner work and looking back, I started seeing my part in it. And so I was able to get that different perspective on it. And not only start forgiving him more, but start forgiving myself. And I don't know whether I actually, it's a good question, whether I have, I'm starting to feel, have I actually fully forgiven myself for allowing it to carry on as long as it did? And not having the courage to stand up and say, look, no, this really isn't working. Because it was my fears of not being able to cope beyond, you know, outside of the marriage that held me there. And also this, no, I've given my word and I have to see this through. And, you know, so I think actually in this conversation, I'm feeling that there is a part of me that still hasn't forgiven myself for, you know, not facing it sooner and taking that step. So this is great because that's something I can now deal with, because I actually have tools and techniques to be able to go in, speak to that part of me, that age me, and give her permission, let her find a way of forgiving herself. So yeah, that's what's there for me. Rachel, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just the word itself, forgiving, can bring up, it hangs, there's so much that hangs off that word, right? I think if we think of the word release, which is really truly what it is, you're releasing to an attachment of something, be that a person or a thing, a belief. And for me, it wasn't like I set out and thought, I have to now forgive myself. It's more, it felt more like a natural evolution of going through whatever, you know, what I was going through. And it was almost like I was working towards that. It's, you know, I first had to have the acceptance, and then I needed compassion. And with those two, acceptance and compassion, working together, that it's almost like that produces the baby of forgiveness, right? You know, that those two coming together help you to be able to forgive, be that someone else or yourself. But I do strongly believe that, from my own personal experience then, that I've truly been able to forgive another only after I have learned how to forgive myself. I could say, oh yeah, I forgive them, but then still, if I was really brutally honest, there was a little, you know, maybe that was sitting there gnawing away. And so, like, on some level, yes, okay, I'm not going to let this bother me anymore kind of attitude. But true forgiveness, how could I truly forgive someone else if I don't know how to forgive myself first? It's the same with loving, right? You can't truly love somebody unconditionally if you can't actually unconditionally love yourself. So for me, that certainly became very apparent in my last couple of months that I've been working on, that it was first feeling and acknowledging that I had sadness, that I had guilt, that I had regret, that I had all these emotions within me still, even though I had done a lot of work prior to that. And then it was, okay, well, feel that remorse, but then use that remorse to actually help you to do something positive now with that. And that was to take the responsibility of what has happened and really tapping into, I need to fully accept this and be okay with it. And that then led into this period of kind of recovery from, you know, moving out of guilt, sadness, shame, all the rest of it, into this acceptance and compassion. And this period was backwards and forwards, you know. It was a yo-yo experience, and that's why you call it the emotional roller coaster. You think, oh yeah, oh no, no. And then there comes this, that then starts to transform into this renewal. And that's when forgiveness, where a forgiveness has started to come in. And when I, you know, realized that having compassion for myself and loving myself through it was what was able to give me that forgiveness. So I was just able to be like, it's okay. You didn't, you know, whatever has happened. You know, it's not right, it's not wrong. It just is. But if it made you feel not good, then for you it's wrong. So what can you do next time to make so that you feel something is good and right for you? And to forgive myself for that came quite naturally and quite easily to a certain extent. I found the acceptance probably the hardest. Compassion started, once I tapped into it, just has blown open, and I have compassion like oozing out of me. And then that forgiveness was just a natural byproduct. So that's why I would say,
yeah, there's so much there that you talked about, and God, you know, talking about that whole journey of what it is and how you did that step by step and that back and forward, I think so important, because I think people sort of think it's a very linear project. It isn't. It's not linear at all. And I think what started to really come for me while you were talking about a lot of stuff that I think about, which is really about when you talked about this idea of acceptance and then compassion together. It made me think about what is our basic fundamental desire as a human being is connection, right? Our basic fundamental desire is connection. Yet, every time we hit our heads, we go into our heads, we lose connection with ourselves. And in a way, whenever we start blaming, shaming, and all of those things, what are we doing? We're moving away from ourselves and we're disconnecting from ourselves. So what I am sort of really thinking about now is more about, is part of the idea of forgiveness is about coming back to self. That it's a kind of like a reawakening or a reemergence back to ourselves. Back into completeness and back into wholeness. And that's what's really starting to trigger some stuff up for me right now as I'm thinking about that. Because you've mentioned, and both Carol Ann mentioned this the inner work. And as a neurologist, for me, the inner work is when you go in and you start processing, right? You start looking at things and you start processing. But what it's really doing is it's activating and opening up your mind in a way that's building, strengthening neurons, strengthening connections. And I think that part of this mental, of going in the inner work is building that mental capacity so that you're able to make those kinds of decisions. So you're able to go, okay, I can see the deeper truth here. I can see my part, which Carol Ann said, which was so important. I can see my part in the deal, right? And I might not like it. And to acknowledge that and not move away from it, but to move towards it, to move towards that, okay, that's where I am. I'm going to move towards it instead of moving away and getting into that place where we start to kind of blame ourselves again. So I think that roller coaster is our tolerance, or our window of tolerance. Each time we go back, we come forward, we go back, we come forward, we go back, we come forward. But we're building that mental muscle, that physical capacity to hold and to be okay. And as you said something so beautifully, which was once I'd done acceptance and compassion, well, forgiveness just happened. We didn't even have to do a conscious decision because it becomes a natural part of self-love. You know, once you've got that compassion, it's almost like your heart just opens up. And the doorway, because anger and all our negative kinds of ways of thinking that take us into our negative thinking, closes the doorway to our heart. It seals it shut. But every time we go closer, we're connecting more to the whole of our physiology, and we're connecting to that wholeness. And so I loved that you said that. I absolutely loved it that you said, oh, then forgiveness just happens. Yes, it does. It becomes the byproduct. And you called it the baby. Yeah, it's the baby that happens as a result of this communion of acceptance and compassion.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you mentioned about the room that you need to make it mentally. And also when you're doing the inner work and you're emotionally releasing, you're also creating that space within you to be able to forgive. Because if there's no, we need to lose something to be able to make room for something new to come in its place. So if you're holding on to resentment, and you don't want to let that go, well, where is forgiveness how can it get in, So you have to first let go of that to be able to make room. So yeah, I think it's great that you mentioned the mental, and we need to think that, physically within your body also.
And that then means why timing is so important. You have to have enough of the space, enough of the capacity to be able to do it. So you're building up these resources and resilience. Yeah. As you said, your self-confidence and your self-esteem, you were building it in that process so that you were strong enough to be able to look at those things, to turn towards those kinds of things. And it really made me think about what is the purpose of, say, of not forgiving. So if we holding on, we're worrying about fear to the self, right? For some reason or other. But when we're forgiving, we're moving towards the self, and we say, there's no fear. There's nothing to worry about. I can hold you in this space. Mm. So it gives me that sense that maybe forgiveness has that space, that yes, it's a product of two things, but it's also that it really allows us to hold that space for new things to come in.
I think also it was a sense of, like when I said that there was a lack of self-worth back earlier in my journey, and working on that first, I needed to get to a place where I had a sense of self. Otherwise, what am I forgiving? So getting to that sense of self is critical, because without it, you're probably too focused on everybody else around you, and you're then in that self-protection mode. And self-protection not necessarily is a good thing. It depends how you look at it, and what that means for you. But on the surface, it sounds like, oh, well, that's good, you're just protecting yourself. But for me, it's not. It's actually, it's the ego trying to protect itself, and then you're always going to keep having an internal battle with yourself. So you're not really protecting yourself. You're just looking for an inner conflict.
Yeah, exactly. I agree wholeheartedly. And as I said, when you connect to the other self, our bigger self, or the self that has the perception, when we move towards ourselves, we start to feel safe. That's the real safety. That's the real protection, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that feeling then takes us into that connection to the universe and to God and to the oneness we would.
And that's the healthy aspect of ego. That's that healthy level, those healthier levels of ego, because you've got the different levels of ego. According to the Enneagram teachings, you've got those 9 levels of healthiness. And most people rumble around near the bottom ones, you know. But if you can move up into those higher levels and, you know, have a unified ego, so you're not splintered into the different aspects of ego, that you have a united ego and you're right in those healthier levels, that's when you can have compassion and you can be come from that place of forgiveness and self-forgiveness. Because the ego is quite a complicated area, and I think we tend to try and push it away because we say, oh no, that's our ego, as if it's something bad. But what you need to look at is it's the unhealthy aspect of ego. And what we're looking at is moving towards the healthier aspect of ego, which, yes, its prime directive is to keep us safe. And so that is, you know, where we're at, but it's in a healthier way. And it allows you to make healthier choices. But what you're saying about a need of sense of self, that could be an obstacle that you have in the way, because maybe you're frightened about letting yourself have a sense of self, because you think, oh, what am I going to find if I do get a sense of self? Because that who I was got me here. Who is that person? So having that courage again to face that sense of self and really get a sense of who you are is important, because yes, you can't forgive yourself until you've got that. And I think what you were saying about that giving space inside relates to the time that I was saying, giving yourself time, because sometimes we expect everything to be sorted right now. I need to forgive myself right now. Well, it doesn't happen. So it's about time and space.
Yeah.
Because that does allow them for different perspectives. Because once you move up into those higher levels and healthier levels of ego, you get a whole different perspective on it. You're not shutting down, you're opening up, just opening up. And it's really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And healthier. You feel different in yourself, you move differently, you take different actions. And as you were saying, Rachel, that forgiveness, just suddenly, it just becomes natural.
Yeah.
It's not something you have to force. It's like, oh yeah, it's a matter of course.
It's almost like it's the seal on the end of like the whole process that you've been doing, where you're restoring your inner well-being, and forgiveness is just like that, the seal of approval. I don't know, but the seal to say your well-being is restored, or in the restoring process. It's like, you know, it's almost, it gives you a sense of peace. Peace. It's giving yourself, forgiveness is you giving yourself back to yourself. Yeah. And so I think if people can change their relationship to forgiveness, instead of it being something that is about excusing or condoning or forgetting ever happen, or let's just overlook it. That's not what it is. That's not what it's about. It's about just think forgiveness is restoring my well-being.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and also being honest with your feelings as well. Is very, very important, because some people will say, I'll go through forgiveness, and but they're still holding that person, the other person that hurt them. Or I like what Carol Anna was saying, that Rachel, you said first you have to accept. It's acceptance that basically, and then the second one, you said compassion, you had to accept things as well. I think that is part of forgiveness, when you actually surrender and say, you know what, and being honest and say, I know what I'm facing right now, but I'm going to accept it. And when I do accept it, I'm going to have compassion with myself. For me, those are the words that I did when I was going through a relationship breakup. I was like, I know what I'm facing. And I've never felt like this in my life before, but I'm going to accept it without blaming anybody. And my ex as well, I think he was hurting as well. So he will come and really angry. I'll be like, you do realize that you're my family. The fact that we have a child together, that means you are part of my bloodline. Your name is now written on my bloodline. So I don't fight family. I need to fight the demons that are in my head and the pain that I'm going through. And I think that moment, that's when he realized that I wasn't joking and I wasn't going to play. And I was like, if we were to actually, if I was to fight somebody, I'd rather go and apply being a wrestler and wrestle somebody in the ring. And I was like, right now, I'm going through pain, and I don't think you're going to help me getting out of this pain. It's me that needs to get myself out of it. And when you accept the problem, this is what I'm facing, and you actually surrender yourself and you're actually dealing with it, and don't involve too many people. Some people, when they're going through something, they intend to involve too many people, and people always have something to say. Advice. They always have something to say. And for me, I give advice when I've been asked to give, but otherwise I just listen. And my friends, they know I don't give advice. If I give advice if they're going crazy, I'm like, you are now going crazy. I think you need to calm down and focus on the problem. So I tell them that when you're going through pain, you cannot be going to the other side and finding other pain. Focus on this pain that you are going through. So that's why you have to do, when you go through something, focus on the pain and find somebody. It's either you can seek a professional. That's when Nkositalkshows coaches and the other coaches around the world, that's what they are for. Or if you are going to tell a friend that you trust. A friend that has helped you before, a friend that has stood by you, or tell a family member that you know, that you trust, that you know they're not gonna pull you down, they're not gonna make things worse. So you can do that, because what I've realized that people make things worse, where when somebody goes through pain, it becomes their problems. They make things worse. So that's why for me, when I'm going through something, I deal with a professional. So that's why I went through 4 psychologists, and some of it was to have somebody, I pay you and we can talk. I know that person is not going to judge me. If I go, we have a chat, they're not going to judge me with anything. They will direct me to the right direction. So those would be things that you actually have to, when Rachel says you have to first accept, and then have compassion with yourself. And then, Rachel, you mentioned that in order to love somebody, you have to give yourself unconditional love. And that's why it's very, very important to love yourself. unconditional. Some people think loving yourself is selfish, but the truth is you cannot even love your children if you can't love yourself. You can't love your spouse if you can't love yourself. You can't love your friend or your family if you can't love yourself. Everything starts with you. So if you work on your relationship, like myself, I always say before I can get along with somebody, I need to get along with Nomsa first. Once I get along with Nomsa, it's a good start, because I know that everybody else that comes my way, I'm going to get along with them. So it's very, very important to forgive yourself. And some people, they are being too hard on themselves, blaming themselves. I should have known. Dating wrong people, I should have known. How do you think you should have known? Okay, some people, the signs are there. But there are some people, like when you start dating them or you go to a business with somebody, they are good to give you the character that you really want to see. They make it, they fake it. So it becomes really, really hard to actually tell, unless if you have studied psychology like me. For me, I actually, when I meet somebody, I get to know them. Instead of talking about myself, I'm interested in getting to know somebody. And in that way, you get to know the person. And also, the future, no one knows the future. And when you go through these problems, some people, they get hurt by friends. Some people get hurt by people who are meant to love them. And then after that, they can't forgive themselves. So for me, the question is, why would this world be created? This world is a world that you're not meant to feel ashamed of the problems, but we do feel ashamed. We're not meant to feel guilty of the problems, because the skills, in order for us to get the skills that we have to go through something. If you were to tell me that today, I actually did a training with Google. I realized last week when I started my business, because I was going through something. I was hiring people and people were ripping me off and not doing the work that they are supposed to do. So one day I decided to do the training on Google. I did the training, everything that you see in my business, it was Daisy and me setting it all up myself and him helping me. And when I did the training, actually, I didn't know that the training, you can actually get a job with it. I saw it on YouTube the other day, and somebody saying this training, you can actually get paid $100,000 a year. And I was like, these are the training that I did when I was going through tough times. I had to forgive myself when I was employing the wrong people. And sometimes there's somebody that built a website the first time and they just disappeared. I was like, what do I do? So I had to actually learn in marketing myself, but I don't do marketing. I hired somebody so I can speak the language of marketing. So I had to forgive myself. So many things that when you go through life, you go through challenges. But when you go through those challenges, you have to have that acceptance of, I'm going to accept whatever it is at this minute. You don't accept it and stay there and accept the problem and give problem hugs and say, I don't have a choice. Yes, we do have a choice. The choice is how we respond to life. How we respond to life is how we are able to move forward with our lives. So if you have these barriers and decide to build a wall to protect yourself, okay, I'm not going to let Shireen do this to me because I've been hurt before. Shireen, you see, in the business, we cannot do this because you just go all in. If somebody else has hurt you, that person was that person. The other, this one is different. That's how I see life. That people that enters my life, they're all different, not the same. What do you think, Carol Ann?
There's lots there. The one thing that I do think is about when you're talking about employing the wrong people, it just made me realize actually that, or think about that phrase where you tell people you're doing the best with the resources you had at the time. And I think it's that understanding that you need to come back to before you can forgive yourself. and actually realize, were they actually the wrong people? Or did they come to teach you something? It just didn't work, because in my word, there is no right or wrong. So it's being able to then rephrase that, in as much as they were the right people to teach you what you needed to learn in that moment. And the fact was that you doing the best with the resources you had at the time. So your way of thinking, your way of being is what attracted those people to you. It is what had you employ them. And so rather than making it wrong by saying they're the wrong people, they were just...
I didn't know, Carol Anne, that some people read books actually, and then they declare themselves as they are web designers and marketing, until Hope's father explained to me that NOMSA people read books. And he was like, I can design a website from the books that I've read, but I'm not a web designer. I can redesign the basics, but if you want a professional. So I was like, oh, okay. So that is the difference. So I thought everybody's professional.
Yeah. So there's a naivety that was there. And it's that, so it's the recognizing there was a naivety. There was a lack of understanding. You've not encountered people like that before. That hasn't been in your world. So why would you think that? You take people on what they say. So that, great learning there. And there's something that clearly wants to be said that's stuck. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'm sure it'll come out eventually. And this is where I have to forgive myself for this way of being, because it's still here. There's still this cough that comes now and again when I'm talking. It's like, okay. So I'll just keep working on that and allowing that to be, and whatever it is that needs to be said will be said in some way, and maybe someone else can say it, because there's something here that actually needs saying that it's not for me to say. And I wonder if there's something that someone else might like to say. What's coming to mind?
Well, what's coming to mind a little bit is, again, the kind of a strategy. And I'm going to go back to something that Rachel mentioned early on, was the word remorse. And that really, and I was reading an article today about young children or young people, where they were looking to see whether people would forgive and what would be the brain changes, particularly for those that had an apology, a sincere apology, and those that didn't get an apology, and what were those changes. But what was really interesting is how important it is when we're looking even at ourselves, is to apologize to ourselves, to actually say, look, I'm sorry I did that to you. I really, really, really am sorry. And that's why the Ho'oponopono works so well, because we actually say sorry. And we say sorry to ourselves. Yes, we did it. And we're taking that ownership and that acceptance of what we've done. We didn't know. And I have a prayer that I always say, which is the Ho'oponopono, but I always say, dear Mother, Father, God, please come live in my heart. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for the things I have and haven't done. Thank you for never leaving me. Thank you for always being at my side. Thank you for coming into my heart and choosing my heart to reside. And for me, when you start to say these words, you start to really feel that apology. And that brings in the ability to feel a tenderness towards ourselves and go, yeah, okay. So there's something about that remorse, which I had was trying to get back to when Rachel talked about it as part of something that she also needed to go through. And I think there is that real sense of really apologizing to ourselves as a strategy that will allow us to then move to the next phase, or to at least give us the space to not be blaming ourselves. Okay, I'm sorry. I really am sorry for that. And to feel it in your heart, so that you can not use it as an excuse to not do, but that you do it and you say, yeah, I'm honoring that. I'm honoring that I did that, and I'm going to do something different now in the next moment. As part of forgiveness is where those fears are, where people talk about, if I forgive you, then guess what? Part of the thing is that you might just do this again. So we want to remember so that they can't do that to us again, to our person in some way. So what it is really recognizing that when we say we're sorry to ourselves, that we're not giving ourselves off the hook. We're actually just saying we're sorry because we didn't know, which is what you said earlier on, Carol Ann. We only had the resources that we had back then. We didn't have the wonderful stuff we have now. So that's what's going on in my mind right now. And I think it's quite an important part of the strategy that needs to be there.
Yeah, that from being able to feel remorse, because obviously not obviously, there was a time for me when my whole self-acceptance and self-healing journey started, that I wasn't even at a place where I had remorse. I was still fighting,
still angry.
So, yeah. And so when I was able to get to that place of actually acknowledging this is how you feel and it's okay, in the sense that these feelings are here, and knowing that I had harmed myself emotionally or mentally in the ways that I had been doing over the years, I then had the intention that, okay, I'm going to move from harm to calm. And how can I create calmness? And so that was by me. And so this is how remorse was helping me, in the sense that it was saying, okay, by not neglecting the feelings of the different parts of myself. So that was the first one. So, okay, if I do feel these things that are classed as negative, it's okay. Allow them to be there. They're here to teach you something. By not making those parts of me wrong for being here and having these particular feelings or emotions. And also by allowing, then not only just allowing it to be there, but then observing it, like observing what it wanted to show me, what it wants to tell me, and then thanking it. And just reassuring myself each and every time that we've got this. And I say we, because it was, there's me, there's me as in a centered me, and then there's all these different personalities or faces, masks, whatever you want to put them, that all were contributing and having something, and some of them gelled well together, and some of them were doing this with each other and not getting on, or even dismissing and pretending that it wasn't even there. And just interesting to observe yourself and all these different aspects of how they show up or how they want to take over when something is going on in your outer world. And so just having that perspective, that understanding with myself that I'm more than just this one thing, this one identity. There's, my identity is made up of a lot of different
facets.
Yeah. And then just saying that each and every one of those has a choice as well, if I allow to give it to them. And so, when you can be in a place of remorse, it means that your heart is already is opened to yourself or to the other, because you're realizing that what you've done doesn't matter whether it was intentional or not. It's just the fact that you are honoring the fact that whatever you've done didn't feel right. It just didn't resonate with you. It was something that is not me. That's why I behaved in that way, or the way I thought that way. It wasn't me. It's a part of me that believed that that's what it should be, to be for the outer world, and not for my inner world. And that's the relationship that really needed to change. That, okay, this part of me needs to turn around and face inward, and I need to have a conversation and get to know it and understand it. So yeah, bit off track, but it did all sort of start from a place of when I was able to start feeling a remorse with myself. of the way I treated myself over the years. Yeah.
Lovely. Nomsa, do you want to? You're muted.
The inner world part, Rachel, when you say you had to have remorse with yourself, and then you accepted your inner world and how you treated yourself. And I think that is really, really amazing. For me, when I do all these healing, I used to actually think that I can do this on my own, but I find it when I do it with prayer and asking God to actually come into my life and hold my hand and direct me with the right, taking me to the right direction. And I find that I find my breakthrough that way. Once I vomit something, I know it's gone. When I pray and I vomit, I know I'm done. Honestly, if I don't go to that place where I feel this thing disgusted about something, when I feel the pain and and then I'm like, and then I know that's it, it is done. I cannot go back to it. That is me being free. So it is the life. Life is a process, and we all have the ways how we heal ourselves, and I love it when Rachel said she had compassion for herself, loving herself and accepting herself without comparing. People compare their lives with other people, but the thing is, when you're born, you're on your own. There's people come and say this child is being born, we come to give cuddles and hugs and present to this child, and then when you start growing up becoming this person, you start comparing your life with somebody else. Why do I have to go through this? Is because our destinies are different. We all fall here at Nkositalkshows, and our destiny has been written different. And then it's up to us to actually see what Rachel is doing this healing, going through healing. She's actually going for her destiny. But if somebody else who is going through similar pain, they are under the pillow, crying and blaming themselves, blaming somebody else. So you can't blame yourself. No one asks for problems. For me, I would say, if you go through a problem, audience that are watching, never ever go to a place where you blame yourself. Never go to a place where you compare your life with the other people. Be okay with what you're going through. Be okay with the life, but hate the problem. You have to hate your problems with the hatred. And when you hate the problems, they go away very, very quickly. Because when I pray, I don't pray because I love problems. I pray because I hate the situation that I'm in and I want to get out. And when I do that, I get out of it. And then it doesn't mean that there's not going to be other problems. The problems will come. You just have to deal with them, forgive yourself. And when you do forgive yourself, you go to the other side and your blessings will be waiting for you. And then you continue writing your own story, how you want to write it. And Carol, any words of encouragement? Is 2:05 now. And also tell our audience who you are and where they can find you, please.
Yeah, I'm Carol-Ann, and you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Carol-Ann Cooper, and I've also got a Facebook group called Get Your Book Written. So what I'd like to leave people with is just a quote by Brittany Burgunder. Forgiving yourself, believing in yourself, and choosing to love yourself are the best gifts you could receive. Shireen, what words of advice would you like to leave people with? And yeah, let them know who you are and when they can get hold of you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Sharon Lovegrove, the Conscious Pregnancy Coach, and I help women that are pregnant or wanting to get pregnant manage to navigate the work life and home life. so that they can comfortably be able to make the right kinds of decisions, feel safe in those decisions, and reach their potential. So yeah, you can find me LinkedIn under my name, Facebook, everywhere. Yes, I suppose the thing that I really want to leave here with is this idea of just keeping your heart open. So no matter what, no matter when, if there's a moment of anger, if there's a moment of anything else, doesn't matter what negative thoughts, just try and pay attention to your heart and just feel, is it feeling free, flowing and open, or is it shut? If it's shut, just take time and sit with it and just say, I know you're in pain. Just acknowledge it. Just accept it so that you can allow it to just get a little bit softer, because that has a direct way in shifting the energy, but it also really helps your brain. So it helps you develop compassion, and it helps you have the space, which I think Rachel was talking about so much, to be able to take the next moment and allow whatever else to come in, so that you can have a better moment next. Rachel?
Yeah, well, I'm a self-growth coach. I'm very passionate about inner self-growth, as you might have realized by now. And as a result of working with me and my coaching program, then really it's for individuals who are just struggling with themselves in general. And what I do is I help to create a lovingly place for them to heal and to learn how to accept themselves, to confidently express their authentic voice, and to just be more compassionate so that they can turn their wounds into wisdom. And I'm really looking for sort of men or women who are eager to get to know themselves on that deeper level and want to take themselves to a new experience of having a relationship with themselves. And through that experience, they will have a strong, heartfelt connection with themselves. They will have turned their inner coach into from an inner critic. No, what is that? Yeah, from an inner critic into an inner coach. And just generally experience more joyful and a peaceful lifestyle, and get on better with the relationship that you are in, be that romantic or business or at work. And so, yeah, if you know anybody, then send them my way. You can find me on rachel-g.com. Or on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Rachel G Healing. And yeah, I think you both said beautiful words to empower people today to take the step to self-forgiveness. For me, the core route for everything is to come with love with yourself, to actually express yourself with love and to give yourself love. Because forgiveness isn't going to be found in fear. So that's it, really.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rachel. For me, and I'm a love harmonist or a matchmaker. If you are looking for love and you're single and you come my way at Nkositalkshows, I help people find their own voice and lead from within. If you are that person who is struggling to forgive yourself, overcoming these challenges in life, and you have created barriers to protect yourself, Nkositalkshows is the right place to come and break the chains of relationship chains and self-love, healing, and awakening relationship to design your relationship. That is a different coaching at Nkositalkshows, and I do that at Hope Springs Eternal Introduction Agency. If you are looking for love, you want to live by your own rules and principles, whatever you call it, and totally self-confidence. I'm doing my confidence challenge actually with Matthew Hazy. I'm on day 24 today, and love your inner child and find that love again, and self-forgiveness, and let go of the past, release conflict and struggles. And then the last one is find your own voice, lead from within. It means you live your life in your own rules and no longer a follower or following other people or comparing your life with somebody else. You just Do what you think is right with God. That's the life that I'm living in my life at this moment. And I'll see you guys later today when I'm doing my challenge. And if you want to connect with Rachel, Carol Ann, or Shireen, you can get in touch with me on my profile or my website, www.hseia.com. And there's the office number there. And I think my mobile number is there as well. And you can email me as well. So all my details are there. And Facebook, LinkedIn, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or you can join our group, Ngosi Talk Show group and Unique Billionaire Mindset. So we have two groups if you want to join. And if you get in touch, I'll connect you with these guys. If you need coaching, trust me, when you live a life without a voice, finding your own voice, it means you can't communicate your want. Is you live your life through blame. You live your life through somebody else, like people write your own story. You're not holding the pen. You're not in that driver's seat. So that's what we do by finding your own voice. Live with grace, everyone, and God bless.